These 10 novels will cure any man that hates women. All the red pillars, all the incellers, all the sad boy millennials will be utterly transformed when they finish these novels. And today we are going to be talking about transcendent literature, pure classics that deal with high-level love, not that crappy princess programming book talk slop that's been being shoved down our throats in romantasy and smut and in genre fiction for way too long now. The actual stories that get to the heart of the divine aspects of love. Because if you can tap into that, you guys, and I know that the world of dating is hard. I had so many crappy girlfriends, as you're about to hear in this video today. I was beaten down, everyone, by not just the books that just fell on me, but by the world of dating. But through literature, I saw a new reality. The first video on this channel, months before I met my wife, was talking about the romantic nature of literature. And then I met my wife, who I've now had a kid with, and who has changed my entire life because of our shared interest in literature. But if it wasn't for many of these novels I am going to talk about today, I would have not been ready to actually be a good enough boyfriend and husband for her so that our relationship would work out. And if we are actually going to create a literary renaissance, and if you do not already know, my name is Ian, and here on Right Conscious, we talk about the best books and authors of all time. And my goal is to create a literary renaissance, to activate 1 billion new readers and bring literature back into the minds of the masses. If we are going to do that, we are not only going to have to tap into romantic love, but the love of the divine and the love of nature and the love of all things. But that starts by opening your heart. That starts by weeding out all of the hate that's been programmed into you through social media and through all of your crappy experiences with superficial people in reality. Do you guys hear me talking about this renaissance? It is from a place of hope. It is a dream. It's from a passion for literature. It's the reason why I was an English teacher for 8 years and was in the pit getting stuff thrown at me, but just still preaching about literature and trying to help students. It's why I'm speaking to you guys right now. And this video is going to be a direct pushback against the two groups that have killed literature. The first one being the entertainment book talk slop crowd. Entertaining literature is fine, but we need to be diving into transformative literature in mass and the unrealistic expectations. The obsession with the honeymoon phase through reading endless novels about courtship and crazy situations are not an example of true love. And then on the other side, all the disconnected lit bros, all the nihilistic people who actually don't believe in love, that don't base their life around love, not just in romantic relationships, but a love of their community, a love of God, a love of nature, of even their pets, like whatever. And I want to challenge you guys right now, when we're going to bring someone up, a man who woke me up when I was 13 years old, and I have nothing but respect for him for that. But one of the bros' favorites, of course, Albert Camus, and you guys have probably heard this before. In his essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, he says that the greatest and only philosophical problem that we need to worry about is the problem of suicide, and if we should kill ourselves or not. But I am here to tell you guys right now about the real greatest problem of all time. That problem is for all the bros out there. The greatest problem, the hardest thing to figure out in reality, you guys, is how to make love last. Because you guys have heard about the divorce rates that are, just under 50%. And of that 40% that stay married, how many more dozens of percent of them are unhappy in their relationships? How many of them are living in a transactional environment until they die? A lot. And then if you think about it, how many relationships fail? Before I met my wife, I probably dated from, the time I was in high school until I was 25. We could say like 15 or 20 people. So I had a 95% failure rate in relationships until I met my wife. And I know people that have dated dozens and dozens of people. Relationships fail, marriages fail all of the time because we cannot figure out how to make love last, how to keep that initial spark. And you hear people talk about it. I just want it to be like the honeymoon phase again, where things are light. And what's happened in modern culture, everybody, is we've been flattened, we've been fragmented. You guys know this already. But what that means is a lot of the time, we are not up for the challenge of trying to make love last, which is the greatest philosophical problem. And to be able to make that happen, I know personally that I have had to individuate and grow more as a man and as a human to try to make love last than with any other problem that I've ever been confronted with in life. And our first novel of the day talks about that. It's all about how to make love last, and it's my favorite novel of all time. And it literally confronts this question. This has metafictional elements to it. And the author, Tom Robbins, literally tells you that this novel solves the problem of how to make love last, everyone. The greatest problem of all time. And if you guys have any trust in me, I don't know why you haven't read this novel yet. There is no better book out there than this. It has everything that you can want. Robbins figured out how to transcend the dumb Shakespearean dialectic of writing a sad boy tragedy or a little black humor novel and move into an entire different zone. And let me tell you guys what this novel is about and why you need to read it and what it can teach you about love and how it can make you believe in love again. Because I know that there are so many of you guys out there that are single right now, that are maybe in an unhappy relationship right now and want to believe. You guys want to do this because I have to tell you guys that I believe in this idea. I think that you should be a hermit and disconnect from the world completely if you want to do that. And I think that that's a noble pursuit. I think that you shouldn't be on social media. You shouldn't be, watching porn or doing anything like that. Work the easiest job that you can and go be a spiritual warrior that's disconnected. If you want to be a hermit, do that. Do nothing. Or I want you guys to connect with reality fully. I want you guys to go all the way. And to be able to do that, I'm sorry. If you're not going to be a hermit, you're going to have to fall in love. You're going to have to become someone good enough to find someone good enough for you, everyone. And the sad reality is, maybe as a man, if you guys want to red pill logic bro me, that means you're going to have to become even better to be able to stand out even more. And you're going to have to try harder to find someone that can match your energy and not give up. And I don't want to turn this into a dumb motivational speech, everyone. But this novel shows the high-level philosophical problems that you are not going to find in Hegel's phenomenology of the spirit. Guys, you could read Spinoza's ethics. You could sit there and read Zizek all day. The problems, philosophical problems and spiritual problems that you are going to confront in your romantic relationships or just surrounding the idea of love. If you want to be a hermit and commit yourself to the divine, the problems that you find as you go higher and higher in that will trump anything that you will find in a book, because it's actually a lived experience and it requires you to change. To understand Hegel or understand Zizek, it's an intellectual obstacle, and you might have to open your mind and figure it out and have it explained to you, or slowly figure it out yourself, but it doesn't require any seismic shift within your own soul to do. But to reach the higher levels of the divine through love, or the higher levels of the divine in connection in a relationship with another person, requires you to actually have a soul level transformation time and time again. And this is why, I just mentioned the 50% of people in that divorce, but think about the people that stay together and are just unhappy. How many more dozens of the 50% left are those people? The transactional relationship types that just stay together for the kids and secretly hate each other and are, just watching porn all the time and wishing they were with someone else. How many people does that make up of the rest? How many people actually reach the highest level of soul level transformation? And so that's what this novel is about. So this novel is about two different people. First of all, the Woodpecker, who is the FBI's most wanted man. And Robbins is 100% playing on this bad boy trope that's present in romantic literature. But as you'll see in a second, he changes it entirely. And then on the other side, and both of these characters are in their 20s, there's this ex-princess named Lei Cherie. And Lei Cherie's family was like the royal family in some like Eastern European country that's like fake, that was overthrown by communists. And the US government is just giving them a pension to stay quiet and not rouse any political problems over there. And so she was raised as this like exiled royal, and she's just kind of the pretentious nepotist baby, right? The story starts with her going to this environmental conference in Hawaii, and she meets the Woodpecker there, and he's like super ostracizing and weird. And then she eventually realizes that he's going to like literally dynamite and blow up this conference, and she tries to stop them, but of course they fall in love with each other. And once again, not going to be sharing any spoilers across this video other than just light stuff. But one of the first things that happens in this novel that I think shows what modern love should be about and why modern love matters and is still possible, but how we're going wrong, is that for love to work, it requires two people who are willing to dance with each other, two people that are willing to go higher and higher in terms of growth with each other and not stop. And as you go higher and higher, it's like a video game, you guys. When you play Super Mario Brothers level 1, it's easy. As you go higher, your skill increases, but the levels are harder. They take longer to beat. Sometimes it may take you hours to beat a level. And the same is true with anything in art, in business, in all these things. As the level increases, the problems become bigger, but the payoffs become bigger. And staying stagnant is always a recipe for disaster and losing this concept of love. And so one of the first things that this relationship starts with is this, you guys. The woodpecker sees that Lei Cherie is spiritually unaligned, that her cycle is not aligned with the moon. And so he shows her how to do it, you guys. Whoa. But this is actually just natural fertility method. And if you guys don't know, in 2026, natural fertility method, if done correctly, is basically a 100% effective way to not have a baby and not have to use birth control and not have to use a condom. Crazy stuff. Look it up. Do your research. Everyone I know that has done this, including myself, has used this to 100% success. But it's so funny because the toxic bros out there, you guys, have become obsessed with this, because what the toxic red pill, disconnected, transactional bro out there who doesn't actually want love and to reach the higher levels of problems wants in a relationship is this, you guys. They want their mother, who by the time they were 8 and 9 had suffered so much abuse and dismissiveness and resentment from their dad that they had just put up and shut up. And outside of an occasional outburst, were unemotional. And to do that requires them to have a girlfriend that is drama-free, that isn't emotional. And if you guys know anything about women, my wife just heard me say that. My wife just heard me say that, and she said, "You guys know nothing about women." So let me tell you guys a secret. Women are emotional. A woman in a natural state has emotions. Sometimes they are irrational, and that's fine, whatever. But what the new toxic bros want, and why they're making their girlfriends and partners learn natural fertility method and stick with it, is that they don't want to use condoms. They want full pleasure output, but they also don't want their girlfriends to be on birth control, because if it's hormonal birth control, it will make them more hormonal and more dramatic, and that's the last thing that they want. They want to be able to have a surface level relationship where they can pump and dump, be able to play video games or do whatever routine that they want to do with no moral or philosophical confrontations, and that's it. That's the ideal relationship for them. So the high-level ones are doing this, but not as a way to help their girlfriends align and learn more about their cycles or stuff like that in a spiritual way, but for their own optimization, their own administrative, utopian social engineering of this random girl that they met, wherever it was, that poor soul. And when you think about modern relationships, that's what they have turned into. I have known so many people that have these transactional relationships. And what the woodpecker does, and what Still Life with Woodpecker shows, is what happens when you bring in that trickster energy, you guys. What happens when you bring in the dynamite? What happens when you bring in the bomb? Because what's so beautiful about literature, guys, is this, or love is this. If you ever have had a friend that's with someone else and you hang out with maybe them for the first time, what's the natural thing you ask? Hey, how'd you guys meet, right? And if they've been a couple for a really long time, their faces light up, and what they do is go over the novel of their love story. Because if you've been in a relationship for a long time, I've literally told my story of how I've met my wife hundreds of times by now. And I know everything that I should say and shouldn't say to keep people interested, where to inflect and not inflect, like all this different stuff. And my wife and I can tag team it if we're together. And it's funny because love happens subjectively. It doesn't happen logically. Growth in a relationship happens subjectively by not viewing, for instance, the other person who has emotions as someone who's crazy. I have so many friends, you guys, this is so funny, that really are terrible boyfriends or husbands. A lot of these people, like ex-friends, people I used to know when I lived in Las Vegas, and they barely see their wives. They basically relegate all the cooking, the cleaning, the childcare, all to their wives. They're all pornography addicts. They all love video games or sports betting and stuff like that. And they're generally avoidant and disconnected and have really no emotional capacity and give no emotional energy to their wives. And so their partners become what? What do you guys think? Angry, emotional, start causing problems, right? Start doing things. And instead of talking to them, they say, well, you're just borderline personality disorder. You're bipolar. You got problems. They do the classics 1950s, put the woman on Valium, but now it's go learn about yourself on TikTok or Instagram, hun. I don't want you to ruin your spirit through pills. But you're the problem. I'm not the problem. And the same thing happens. Like, I'm not just blaming men here, but like women do crazy shit and like manipulate men. I was in a relationship where I was just getting battered in my past, man. But growth in relationships happens through subjective reasoning, through spiritual growth. And the way we talk about love and the way that love is written is through subjective angles. And a lot of the time it comes with this trickster energy. You've heard this term, opposites attract. And that's not exactly true, but for a relationship to work, the contrasting dynamics need to always be open and able to flow and able to explode and dance with each other and never become stagnant if the relationship is going to continue to evolve and love is still going to stay. And what I love about this novel, you guys, and why this is so good at this concept is that the middle of the novel, I'm not going to spoil it, one of the characters has the ultimate philosophical revelation about love, you guys. There's like dozens of pages of this contemplation that one of the characters goes through trying to figure out the secret of love. And I'm not going to spoil it here, you guys, right now, because it really makes the novel. And I really want you guys to go and read this if you haven't. But it really shows, and I think is a great blueprint and a great example of what love truly is and how deep it can go, is even just at the start, even just at the intermediate stages of a relationship. You know what's so funny to you guys is that I feel like these books are somewhat like psychedelics. If you've ever taken a psychedelic before, it doesn't have a long-term impact. Guys, if psychedelics actually worked in terms of changing who you are, we would live in a utopia right now. I know countless guys, all those guys who I just mentioned have all taken acid and shrooms, and so a lot of them have done DMT. Even one of the worst, has done like the ayahuasca retreats. Why isn't he healed? Why is he such a piece of crap and totally disconnected still? Because it shows you these higher levels of possibility. It shows you the end game. It can heal some different aspects within you and help you realign. But for it to actually work requires you to go on that journey and stay realigned. But the greatest thing it does is show you that this is possible, that these mindsets in this world and a new reality for you is possible, right? And some people can become obsessed with that idea of a new reality and never go and do it. And so I feel like these novels do a very similar thing. And funny enough, psychedelics have a very trickster energy. They can show you these ideas within the world of love and connecting with others that you maybe would have never thought of on your own. They can basically give you the template and then you have to go fill its shoes. And in our world right now with like relationship advice and like crappy books on relationships, this is the type of stuff they don't talk about. This is the secret of being a reader. This is what I was talking about before, why it can really change your life, why reading these books can change your life, whether you are in a relationship or not in a relationship. And if you don't want to be in a relationship at all and you're steadfast on that, it's something that you can use to understand what other people are going through, what other people should be striving for. And so I think that Still Life with Woodpecker, even though I've mentioned it a lot on this channel, people will say, why do you talk about the same books? It's the best book for the topic. It's so good that it can fit into almost every single video. And I try to talk about new books, and there'll be a lot of books that I've never mentioned before on this channel coming up right now, but it's something to think about. And if Still Life with Woodpecker sounds good to you, well, that means that you need to join the Right Conscious Book Club, which is the most active book club in the world. In 2026, we are reading 28 novels together. The book club is hosted on Substack, where I have hundreds of hours of literature and writing course content, where I am posting every single day, where you can read my writing for free, where you can watch me live stream every single week. And the literary renaissance is happening on Substack. The best readers and authors in the world are over on Substack. And if you guys want to support me, if you guys love what I am doing here, you are going to love what I am doing on Substack, you guys. I am going crazy over there, releasing all types of content. And so I would love your support, whether you want to be a free subscriber or a paid subscriber over there. And I would love to meet you in my book club. And all you have to do to join is go down to the links down in the description below. And if you guys want to get some Right Conscious merch, like this Joan of Arc shirt I'm repping right now, I have so many cool designs over on the Right Conscious store. I'm adding new shirts all of the time. I have an entire new literary renaissance line coming out, so go check that out. I also have a free guide to my 500 favorite novels that can change your life down below too. So many cool things down below, so that's how you guys can support me. And now let's get into the rest of the video. And so next up we have Haruki Murakami's 1Q84. And I had to do this first of all at the start of the video to trigger all the lit bros out there. Do you guys know, right, Conscious, that people in Japan don't even like Murakami? Do you guys know that there is a similar disconnected group of existentialist losers and nihilistic losers over in Japan that of course hate Murakami because he talks about synchronicities, everybody. He brings the energy and love to the table in almost all of his novels. And the greatest example of that is his novel 1Q84, which is a mammoth of a book, you guys. I think it's over 800 pages. It's actually not that hard of a read. It's not that complex of a read either. It's a pretty fun read. We did it in the book club last year. I've read it a couple times. And 1Q84 is about two different people, Tango and Amame, and they knew each other in childhood and had this spiritual moment together in a non-romantic way when they were like in elementary school. And then one of them moves away and they never talk to each other again. Later on in the future though, Tango, who is the man, is a writer, right? He's this big writer and he's trying to be a writer and he's also like a math teacher and he can't get over the hump. He can't write anything good enough to like make it big and get published. And this is like all this, there's so much cool metafictional stuff going on here, but he's helping judge this like writing contest for new writers. And they get this novel submission called The Air Chrysalis from some girl, I don't even remember her name, but she's only 16 years old. And him and the editor read it and they say, oh my God, this is so good, but it's really sloppy. Like the story and the outline is great, but it's really sloppy and will never win the contest. So they create a secret scheme where Tango basically rewrites this entire novel to make it really good. And it creates this massive explosion of problems. And the story's based in this idea that both characters move into this alternative reality. It's very Murakami. They move into this alternative world where there are differences and like there are these small magical systems and oddities that are going on. And over time, over the course of decades, their love lasts. Their moment when they were younger reoriented their spiritual and compass when it comes to love and created a new standard, created a new transcendent within them. And no matter what world they were in or what was going on, the insanity, the trauma that was happening to them, and there's a lot of it in this novel, it's some pretty heavy stuff, they still are trying to find their way back to each other. And when it comes to love, you guys, when it comes to life, when it comes to escaping being a logic bro, the greatest thing that you can do is get into synchronicities, is to get out of this idea of your life just being this dead, unanimistic, objective, fucking linear narrative. Because what I opened myself up, I read Robert Anton Wilson, the Cosmic Trigger series when I was like 17 years old, and it blew my mind because he was talking about all these synchronicities. And then I started reading all this new age stuff, and they're like, yeah, if you open yourself up to synchronicities and start paying attention and start becoming aware, you can start lucid dreaming 15 times a month. Like all this stuff can start happening to you. And I said, okay, I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to start spiritually aligning myself and actually paying attention and looking for things and what's going to start happening. And what started happening, and I've talked about this a million times on the channel and given examples, was all these synchronicities that were almost statistically impossible. Like 1 in a million, 1 in 5 million chances, like things that shouldn't have happened. And it's like, it happens once, you're like, okay, there's always an explanation, right? But when there's hundreds in your life and you combine the probabilities of them together, it becomes impossible. And it's not just me. I'm not the messianic person. Anyone that's opened themselves up to synchronicities and actually is living it and knows about it and has read about it and is really living it out and is aware and open in their personal life has that type of stuff happen to them all of the time. Like the anecdotal evidence is out there and all you have to do is go out there and do it. Just don't do it as, I'm going to test this hypothesis. Like believe it. Actually learn how to believe, which a logic bro, which a lit bro can't do. Believe all the way and it will start happening to you also. Murakami is a master of showing synchronicity. And what's interesting about these ideas, if synchronicities are true, if there's a deeper level to this reality that, that's connecting everything, then time is a flat circle. And when you meet someone that you're going to have this huge future with, it's this massive potential energy when you meet them and there's explosions and it feels weird because your bodies already know everything that's going to happen. Eren Yeager, Attack on Title, Attack Attack on Titan style, everybody. You know everything that's going to happen. You have this full-on prescience that's like, but that's internal. It's not like actualized in your mind. You feel it all in your soul, and that's why it's like, oh my God, you can feel the weight to it. And 1Q84 is about secret societies and cults and assassins and this magical group of people called the little people, but it's really about love. It's really about having love last and staying connected to that idea. Because I swear to God, you guys, if you are open to if you can escape the trap of logic, I swear, I'll promise you guys, I'll put a guarantee on it. If you can escape the path of logic, if you can get out of this minimized objective reality mindset that is just so easy to implement and create a rich and subjective world that's not like tragedy coded or sad boy coded or anything like that, just like a very positive, open, exploratory, subjective, spiritual mindset, you will find love, you guys. I don't care if you're an ogre. I don't care who you are, what other problems you have. There is going to be someone out there, and they're going to be more than happy to have found you, because they're going to have been they're going to be open to the same thing also, and have dated a bunch of superficial people like you have, and kept on keeping on, and they'll be so happy to be with you. I know people who it took them 10 years, 15 years to find someone, but they didn't stop. They never got better. They kept going, and they made it happen. Intimacy, love, keeping love in your life, finding love. It's not a system. It's not, pickup artist strategies. It's not having the most amount of money. Oh, you need money. You guys, you don't need money, you guys. I used to be dead broke, you guys, like no money in the world. And I had girlfriends. They didn't care, because I brought the force of energy to the situation, and there was no one else they knew, millionaire or not, that had that, and that's what they wanted. That's what most people that are awake enough want, you guys. Crazy. Eventually, yeah, they want stability. They don't want you to be a bum. But finding love, you guys, and why it still exists, it's an existential structure. It's a structure. And if you can fit the structure and you put enough repetition over time, you will find love, and you will find out that it exists really fast. And what's crazy is that once you align into it, you guys, what's crazy about being married now and like having gone through the dating pool, like the ups and the downs, is that like I'm never going to date again, but dating seems so easy to me. Like the entire process, like being in a loving state, like all of this stuff is so easy because I have to do it at such a high level all of the time that I understand the structure really well. And so I have all this experience. And so when I see people struggling who have no idea or don't believe in it, it's like, oh my God, bro. Like, it's like watching like a 6-month-old try to walk, or like someone ride a bike or roller skate for the first time. You're like, no, don't do that. Or like play a video game that you've mastered. Like, no, don't go over there. And what I also love about Murakami is that he's controversial, that his approach to love, like people will complain about it all the time, and his approach to women and all this stuff. Yeah, it's quirky. Yeah, it's weird. And guess what? You're weird as hell, dude. Like I'm weird as hell. Like we're not these people online act like we're all just like a bunch of losers. Like we're just like the most bland and vanilla people. Like we weren't raised on the internet. Like we're not these weird idiosyncratic people with these weird desires. Not saying that like, oh, we're all a bunch of weird Japanese men like Murakami with like weird kinks or whatever. But like Murakami stuff is like a lightweight. Like these people like don't exist in reality. And these are the same people that are like, anyway, don't get me going. Like it's been a funny group, and I pushed to cancel Murakami for his views or what he says. Like, oh, he's describing women's breasts. Why is he always describing women's breasts? There was this whole thread about women. I saw a video. Women aren't jealous of other women's breasts. Murakami's overplaying that. What? Have you guys ever talked to women before? Especially like really... What? It's obviously not an end all be all. It's not like, but like to act like that's not present is insane, especially in some people, not everybody. And to act like someone like Murakami, who became a writer because he was sitting at a baseball game and saw a dude hit a home run. And he said, I want to be a writer. And he just started like doing unconscious surrealism, isn't going to have weird stuff in his work, is like, what? So next up we have All the Pretty Horses by Cormac McCarthy, which some of you guys may be like, Ian, how did you fit Cormac McCarthy in here? But this book is, first of all, Cormac McCarthy's only love story. Cormac McCarthy is one of the greatest writers of all time. I think he's the greatest writer of all time. And this is his only normal love story in any book that doesn't have any incest or weird stuff going on. And so that automatically makes it really good. But what I want to talk about with this and why it's important about modern romance is a lesson that I want you guys to hear that is really important, which is this, you guys, that sometimes in your life, there are a lot of people who were aligned at one point with everything that I'm saying. I think we're all somewhat start off like this. And over time, we get beaten down. We have these relationships, we have these problems, and it starts to not go our way. And we can become really bitter, you guys. You know, I was once in a relationship, you guys, that was really deep. Like, I went really deep into it, and like almost all the way, like in terms of like marriage and kids and all of this stuff. And I got manipulated, and I was basically sent to rock bottom, and and obviously the relationship, I got out of the relationship, and I felt like I was never going to love again. Like, I was never going to find it. I felt hopeless, you guys. I was totally red pilled, like whatever it was. I can't, like, no, you guys know me. Like, I was never like fucking Andrew Tate or like an idiot, but I was like definitely like, oh my God. Like, I tried, like I went all the way. Like, I dated around and like found someone who I thought was perfect and like went all the way, and it still didn't work. And what All the Pretty Horses showed me, and why it's so important for modern love, is this, you guys, that sometimes there are forces that are greater. Sometimes you can have this relationship that's perfect, that like the sex, the dynamic between you, the environment, like everything is absolutely perfect. And this is what's called the Phantom X, actually. A lot of avoidant men, a lot of lit bro and logic bros have something called the Phantom X in your life. This we got some fire coming up right here, you guys. And if you want to learn about relationship psychology, and they had one of these relationships that didn't work out because of them or because of the person or whatever, and this Phantom X haunts them because they can logically project back to them in every situation or every relationship and say that this person isn't as good. Like, the person I'm with right now isn't as nice to me, or didn't do this thing I like as well as this person, like whatever it is, right? Like, but through that process and over time, we only remember the good things and forget about the bad things, forget about what happened. And a lot of the time, you guys, there are these oppressive forces. There are these things that happen in our relationships that are out of our control. Maybe past trauma from this person, or societal forces, or career moves, or whatever, that prevent us from actually realizing these relationships and for them to work out. And because these relationships are so good, you guys, like, when they're good, you fight way too hard for them, because like the highs are so high, you hold on for way too long, and you go through all of this crap during the fact, and usually even after the fact, for this other person, and then it's all out to nothingness. And All the Pretty Horses has one of these types of relationships, a perfect relationship that has outside forces that are interfering with it. And what I want to say to you guys, and this is making me emotional, but is this: if you've gone through something like that, and if you're young, one day you may go through something like that. Usually you have to walk through the fire to be able to go all the way. You can't become bitter. You can't detach. You can't take a malignant path with all of it, or you're going to get yourself into real trouble. It's going to lead to your death, whether physically or of the soul. And Cormac McCarthy is a master of showing that in All the Pretty Horses and in his Border trilogy, of what this romantic, insane, perfect love that gets ruined because of other things, what that can turn into in a positive way and a negative way. And in my opinion, a lesson is that from this book is that you need to do whatever you can to disconnect from that energy, because sometimes it can be used as a superpower. I know for a long time I was using what happened to me in that past relationship to channel energy, to channel anger, to channel malignant emotions that made me better at life, that made me even more appealable to women, and like all this other stuff, all this short-term gain, but it was holding me back from my greater vision, you guys. The reason that this channel took a while to take off and like I was blocked in so many ways is because I was still connected to that past relationship. And just to reiterate one more time, I believe that if you're given one of these things, that if you can get it one time, then you can get it 2 times. And that journey of healing is going to help you get to something that is even better, especially over the long term. Or if you don't do anything about it, something much worse. It's one of these hands that the universe deals you that is one of the hardest and most complex things to deal with love. And it's caused so many people to become bitter and detached. And I recommend reading All the Pretty Horses for that. And the entire Border trilogy. We're reading this right now in the Right Conscious Book Club. We're reading book number 2 across the month of March, and I think finishing up in May. So you still have a lot of time to finish the entire series and come talk with me. Like, I don't want to cry, you guys, but you guys got this. If you guys have gone through something like this, or when you do, come back and watch this, reach out to me, and I will always give you guys some support. So we got another wild card pick coming out here, you guys. You guys thought, what'd you guys think? I'd be talking about Pride and Prejudice, you guys? We're talking about the deeper level teachings, you guys. We're talking about the real literature that's going to make you contemplate love at a deeper level, that shows you the power of love. And so the remains of the day, if you don't know, is about a butler, you guys, a British butler that is 100% detached from emotion, that is 100% committed to his job of being this polite British man that has no emotions, has no time for love. His conception of love, and this is written from a first person point of view, kind of in retrospect about his life with this, you know, his master, this lord or whatever that he's living with. It's very elite and very powerful in British society. And there's so many people in our world that believe this advice that you need to have this career, that you know, you have this duty, you need to be dignified, and that love and any type of emotions ruins the house. You know, if you think about a staff that, like, you know, in one of these elite mansions, there can't be hysterics going on. There can't be questioning or oddities. Everyone's just pale faced or happy and, you know, blank face happy and doing their thing. And the butler, you know, kind of the leader of the house, has to be enforcing all of that. But what Ishiguro does to add contrast in this novel, there's many different things that we won't talk about in this novel, is show that with two of these people, the two people that you wouldn't think could even feel anything, that love is still possible between them in the most unemotional circumstances. Love over time is possible. And why I like this novel is this, that it shows you that love is a choice that sometimes is irrational, that might have consequences. Going back to like Woodpecker and Still Life with Woodpecker, looking at your you know, I know plenty of people whose families hate their partner, but they love their partner and everything's perfectly fine. But sometimes you have to break up with your family or create a lot of psychic distance with them to be with this person because they are mean, they are disapproving, they are being, you know, rude to whoever you are with. And you have to make this choice between duty and objectivity and like, oh, she's a histrionic or whatever, or love and the power of love. Because what's so funny about parents, you guys, and them not liking someone is that they are always right until they are not right. Right? Like, I have a friend whose mom is very judgmental, and he's like, she doesn't really know who he is. Like, he takes acid and like loves fish and like he's a weird dude, but his mom's like a hardcore Catholic. And so all these girlfriends he had over the years, she absolutely hated and would talk crap about and all this stuff. And then the relationships wouldn't work out because of other things. And he would say, I think she's right. And then eventually he got married to someone and they've been married now for 5 or 6 years. And I was like, dude, she was right until she wasn't right. And that's why you can never listen to anyone when it comes to this stuff. But when we think of romance, we think of the weekend vacation, we think of going camping or all of this stuff. We think of the easy stuff. But what love is a lot of the time, it's the hard choices that you are going to have to pick for love, the things that you're going to have to sacrifice for a relationship. Hey, oh my God, a relationship takes up my time. I don't want to give up my time. Yeah, man, you're going to have to give up some of your time to have kids or have a relationship. You're going to have to give up some of your hobbies. I can't do that. Yeah, you're going to have to constrain your life or do things faster or figure it out. So many people miss love in the modern world because of these worlds, these reality, whether they're the professional demeanor, their religious demeanor, whatever demeanor it is, they basically are blocking themselves off from other people because of this. And this novel shows you the consequences of that. I'm not going to spoil what happens, but this novel shows you what happens if, depending on what side of the aisle you choose. Because going with the theme of the video, I don't believe that people in the world suck. Most people suck, but I believe that there are people out there for everybody. And that if you can't figure it out, that you are repressing something. And it's way easier than a lot of problems, you guys. Like, I talk to writers all the time. Like, I talk about creating a literary renaissance and like getting your writing, out there. But honestly, that's pretty hard to like be able to become a full-time author with like hardcore literary works. It's like, that's like tens of thousands of hours of like writing and marketing and like networking and all of this stuff to make that dream happen. I think that most of the problems surrounding any repression with love and like all this weird stuff are like a couple thousand hours at most. And if you're being really effective about it and like going to therapy or reading and journaling and like meditating and doing the high level stuff, it's a lot less than that. Which is insane. It's actually with across our entire society. Every problem we have, spiritual, physical, emotional, or intellectual, are just like a couple hundred hours away from getting solved from every person. Like someone who's wanting to get in shape, like they just need to work out like an hour a day, for an hour, like 4 times a week for like a year and be in a slight caloric deficit and they'll look fine. They'll look a lot better. You need to just read a couple hours a week or do some emotional work, or go to church and do a little bit of other spiritual work every single week. And eventually, without that much effort, with just some consistency and a small amount of dedication, you'll reach the baseline where you are a spiritual person or a physically fit person. So next up, we have Lila by Marilynne Robinson. If you guys don't know, Marilynne Robinson is one of the greatest authors alive right now. Her Gilead series, unbelievable. And this is a part of that series, I think book number 3. And so if you don't know, the first book, Gilead, is about I've talked about it before on the channel, and we're going to talk about this, is from the perspective of this Reverend John Ames. And he has a 7-year-old son who he's writing a book to. He's writing this huge, I could just call it book to him, because he's suffering from cancer or like some heart problem. He's going to die soon. And he's a preacher who has lived in his town, and he's like a multi-generational person. And his grandfather helped John Brown out in the abolitionist movement. And he's a pretty hardcore Christian. And later in his life, he marries a woman who's like in her 30s when he's in his like late 60s or early 70s, and they have this kid together. And so that sounds, right, a little bit weird, where we have this, 30, 40 year gap in age, but the novel isn't about that. And so the first novel takes place from Ames' perspective, and then Lila takes place from his wife's perspective. Lila basically during the same time period of the first novel, but we get her backstory. But one of the most important things about this series is this, you guys, that Robinson shows that there is a deep spiritual component to relationships. One of the things that comes up, you guys, in modern relationships, let's just talk about it, is that most people are with other people before they get with their final partner. Like, we're not living in a society where everyone is like, virgins and then they get married anymore. Some people have weird, hardcore past. Some people, were abused or were womanizers or drug addicts or whatever it was. And it's like, kind of rough. It's kind of bad, right? Or they never learned how to love, or were never loved. And there's like all these problems that many of us kind of bring into these relationships. And some of us believe that we're not worth anything because of that. And what these novels show me, and what they really push, is that we think that love is for the 20-year-olds or the 30-year-olds or the people who deserve it, the people who are aligned with it. But love is available to anybody, you guys. It doesn't matter, once you're kind of conscious enough, as I would even say a teenager, love is available to you for the rest of your life, no matter what your circumstances are, in a romantic way and in like more of just a divine and open way. And so this novel, because of the age difference, doesn't have these explosions. There's not these date nights or these super romantic scenes or anything like that. They're living this domestic kind of really slowed down lifestyle that's based on attention. It's also based on this principle that it's not going to last very long. And when it comes to modern dating, what's it based on? It's based on swiping. It's based on excitement. And it's based on trying and getting with all these new people and having all these sexual relationships and whatever. That's really exciting. But real relationships are, I don't want to say they're built on boredom, but all the books in genre fiction only recognize romance if there's an element of excitement in it, and if they clock dopamine. This novel doesn't clock your dopamine, but it is a deep rumination on love. It's a deep rumination on if you deserve love after an abusive and hardcore past. It's a novel that talks about a love that's somewhat odd between people with a 40-year age gap, or like a 35-year age gap. And because Robinson is a hardcore Christian, it's not like fetishized or anything like that. Like I said, you don't really hear about anything sexual in this entire novel. And so you could read this, or you could read the first novel. You could read any of the books in the series and learn a lot about love and what love looks like and the right way to love, in my opinion. And all of it's based in spirituality. All of it is based in these like higher principles, and talks about how people deal with like these really hardcore and intense problems and with their past and with medical issues and like all this stuff. It's really, really good. And I really recommend the Gilead series, or Housekeeping, which is a standalone novel. That's also, I think, a really good novel I could talk about for this video. But this is one I have not talked about. And, hearing Robinson write from Lila's perspective is very powerful and very strong. And it's the antithesis of just these transactional, crappy relationships, or these exciting book talk relationships. So next we have The Sound of Waves by Yukio Mishima. And this was one of Mishima's underrated books. Everyone loves to talk about Sun and Steel, Confessions of a Mask, Temple of the Golden Pavilion, whatever, because they are political. They are hardcore. But there was this moment in Mishima's career before he became too political, but because once you hit like the Temple, the Golden Pavilion, and patriotism, it's basically Mishima pushing his like views on aesthetics, which kind of tie into some of his radical political ideas. And when you read some of his earlier novels like Forbidden Colors or Confessions of a Mask, it's him talking about his like repressed bisexuality. But there was this odd middle period for Mishima, which doesn't get talked about very often, where one could say he was writing like somewhat relatable stories that were rooted in like non-schizophrenic emotions. And when it comes to love stories, there has to be this cliche element, right? At least one of these books has to be somewhat cliche. And the one I wanted to include had to be Yukio Mishima, because this novel is the classic tale, right? There is a young man that comes from a working class family of fishermen on this island off of the coast of Japan. And this takes place after World War II. And he falls in love with like the guy's daughter on the island that runs the entire show, that owns the boats and does it all. And of course, there are problems with that relationship. It is not meant to happen. She's supposed to go off to college or marry someone else on the island who's going to go to college and comes from a more estimable family. And this novel, through Mishima's kind of oddities and idiosyncratic views on just kind of life, which still bleed through in this novel, it's his take on this classic love story. And I think it's better than anything else that has been written like it, because it has the literary elements. It has some of the cultural and political elements that Mishima always injects. It has elements of beauty and Mishima's style. And then it has a beautiful payoff. It has Shinto symbolism and all this stuff that is somewhat otherworldly for us Americans. It's not totally out of this realm. It's not based in a pagan society or a land far away in like a genre fantasy or science fiction book, but it's just enough to kind of realign you and help you understand what, and I should say remind you what love is really about. And it shows you that class constraints and many of these things don't matter if your heart is in the right place. And so if you have not read Sound of Waves yet by Yukio Mishima or any Mishima novel, it's a good place to start. It's a good on-ramp. Is it as philosophical as his other novels or as insane? Absolutely not. But it is a really good story, and we read it in the Right Conscious Book Club and everybody loved it. Everybody was like, wow, I can't believe he was able to do this. And I remember first reading this and I was in this past relationship that was really bad. And it really showed me that it was a bad situation. I just remember seeing the misalignments, seeing the purity of what love should be and what sustains it, and knowing that it wasn't for me. And sometimes just these quick, easy novels are important for us, or important to give to other people to kind of up-level their experience, especially if they're not book talk slop. So next up, we have another Japanese novel. Shout out Japan, everyone. And that is 1,000 Cranes by Yasunari Kawabata. And why I love this one and why I think this one is so important and what it can teach you guys and what it can show you is that, man, your parents and their erotic history, I'm just going to be blunt here, their sexuality, what they did has a major impact on your life, you guys. Like their choices and what they did. Like I have a friend whose dad was a serial cheater, like was cheating on his mom all of the time, and basically was like this sex addict, if you know, just to say it bluntly. And my friend became a sex addict also. He basically became a woman, even though he didn't want to, even though he was a genuinely good guy. Over time, because of some bad relationships and some other stuff, he became a pornography and a sexual, like a sex addict, and was womanizing and just getting with women and leaving them. And he eventually had to get into like Sexual Addictions Anonymous group and like go through therapy and all this stuff. And he's much better now. And this is surprisingly common. And like a lot of people never resolve this. And like, you know, my friend had a lot of resolve to do this many years ago when he was in his 20s and had time and before he started a family or got married. But this novel is about this kid who basically is just trying to live a normal life, just trying to do his thing. And he basically steps into this world of love and desire that was created already by his father. And what's interesting in this novel, light spoiler here, is that our protagonist, you know, gets with some people that his father got with. And what's interesting about this, you guys, and this is in relation to our parents, is that I don't think that any of us have probably slept with someone that our parents have gone with, you know, at least hopefully not, like Jesus Christ. But guys, we don't live in the old world. Maybe in the old world, like I grew up in a city with, you know, 7 million people. And like, I wasn't even the city where my dad grew up in or went to college in. And he was, you know, obviously just with my mom. But like, even if he was like single, let's say, and my parents were divorced and he was hooking up with everyone, there would still be a very low likelihood that I would ever encounter anyone that he ever got with, especially in like a romantic way. But in the old world, and especially in the world of story and, you know, in small towns and stuff, that type of stuff is possible. But archetypally, we do follow in line, unless you break free, unless you consciously awaken and like do something about it, you are just going to follow in the footsteps of your parents, and act like you're not. Like come up with every excuse in the book of how you're not like your parents. But if you've ever just watched your friends basically become their parents, or your siblings or something like that, the same thing's happening to you. We're just blind, right? It's really easy to become blind. And so you go, in my opinion, through these same sexual archetypal romantic patterns as your parents do. And what you learn, you guys, is that you can't ignore it, or it's just going to happen to you. And you can't wheel your way out of it. As any addict or any person that's been caught up in a family cycle or like behaviors from when you've grown up, you just can't say, I'm going to be done now. A lot of the time, a lot of this stuff, especially the more nuanced stuff, stays with you unless you escape. But what does escape mean? Because if you just reject it, you're still on the same plane of dialectic. That's what people don't understand. If, this is kind of what the brothers Karamazov talks about. If your father is a sensualist and your brother and your family are these passionate people and you just become cold and detached, well, then you just are the exact opposite of what they are and are still in the same world. And then your kid will see that you're a cold person, then he'll just swing back and be just like your father. Like it's this cycle unless you can consciously escape. But how do you know that you are consciously escaping? And that's what this novel deals with. That's why I really like it. There's a lot of stuff going on of like him basically experimenting and trying to figure out and realizing that he's still within the dialectic and still trying to make his own decisions. And like this novel is almost a roadmap to that, like how to escape that. How, there's a lot of questions like what if this isn't my desire to get with these people and like it's disconnected from my family? How do you grapple with all of that? And I think in the world of modern romance, even if you're deep in a relationship and you're not like dating, like am I just reenacting my parents' relationship? Questions like that I think are resolved pretty cleanly in this novel, and I think it's a underrated masterpiece for sure. So next up we have an Anais Nin novel, A Spy in the House of Love. And if you guys don't know, Anais Nin was with Henry Miller and like she was having an affair with his psychologist, Otto Rank. We got Otto Rank up here. Let's go. I got all of Otto Rank's books. He's my favorite one of Freud's psychoanalytical proteges, Alder, Jung, Wilhelm Reich. Then there's Otto Rank. Rank was the secretary of William Freud and Freud's favorite for a while until he broke away from Freud and Freud hated him. But this novel is kind of continuing this idea, and this novel is important because something has happened in the modern world with modern people. We've basically been split. We have been attuned because of pornography and movies and other things to this very sexual and emotionally awakened reality. And then on the other side, all of us want a balanced romantic life with someone that we love that has, consistent sex and all this stuff. But there's this split within us. And this split is the reason why, people like my friend and other people are have these split personalities when it comes to romance. And these people ruin romance, you guys. These people ruin a lot of lives and cause a lot of trouble. And the people that are obviously suffer because of them, and then the people suffering from this kind of split mentality are suffering very deeply too. Because in our modern world, you guys, we're dealing with a lot. Like if we're talking about just dating and romance, and just having to live in this world, it's a lot, you guys. Because many of us in this narcissistic reality, and Anais Nin was onto this. This is why this novel is so important. This was written in the 1950s. These problems were present back then, and now they've materialized at a much bigger level. The modern man and the modern woman, especially if they've taken a more malignant, narcissistic, internet culture type mentality, are obsessed with being seen. They're obsessed with being worshipped and desired, and they love to reinvent themselves and optimize, and they love to find these mirrors and these twin flames and have these crazy relationships. They love to have these, they love to love bomb. They love to then become detached and cruel. These cycles are very common. And this novel shows us the interior of that mind. It shows us the performative person, the performative romantic, and what that looks like. And first of all, that's important if you've ever suffered from this or know someone who is like this. First of all, just seeing what is really going on in the interior world is awesome. But to go deeper into the novel, there's this woman named Sabina, and what she does is, and why it's called, a spy, is she basically creates these false identities and lives a new life and has fun and is in love and all these things, and then she leaves. And it's this experience harvesting. When we have this idea of gaining experience and traveling the world and seeing things and experiencing things, being in romantic relationships and loving people is a very easy way to do that, and to see all these different ideations of reality and experience all these different archetypes and types of people. But what this novel pushes against, you guys, and this is really important to sustaining love, is against fantasy. Because Okay. We've been told, right, that all you need in a relationship is this. You need to communicate. You need to be compatible. You need to have your finances in order. You should either like horror movies as a couple or not like them. You need to be transparent. But okay, let's say we have that down. I know people who have that down. Some of these examples of people who I know. But in their internal world, they fantasize about other things. They have the Phantom X. They're addicted to porn, or they love fantasizing about other women or about women or men or about these other things. And doing that a little bit is just natural. That's just humans, right? Like, that's what we do. Like, it's whatever, especially during some hard times. Not the end of the world. But other people become addicted to it. And this is actually the root of any type of addiction. It's a fantasy. Until you reach rock bottom, every addict is living in fantasy. They're living in this false reality where they believe that this drug is helping them and it's awesome and that it's important until they have nothing left. And the same is true with this false fantasizing of love. What people don't realize is that to capture love and to be in a really fruitful relationship, you have to be all in. By being all in doesn't, a lot of people think that being all in means that you just don't stick your dick into somebody else. But what being all in actually means is that you are 100% centered and committed to that person. And my God, I'll even come out and say that, like, well, I don't even need to say that. But what this novel shows is that there is, and because of societal structures, there is an innate desire for us to continuously seek out love, even if we have it, and to sabotage love. And like, just looking at people in the history of humans, you can tell that this is a very core desire. And so understanding that from an internal level and getting some depth on it from someone like Anais Nin that was sabotaging her own life and her relationships and kind of a crazy person in that regard, I think is necessary so that you can up level and do a better job if this ever comes up for you, which it generally does for everybody. So I had to do it, everyone. After a couple negative picks where, you're learning through other people's mistakes on how to be a good lover, we actually just have to move back into the realm of positivity with Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. Because I remember when I was at university, you guys, I was so mad because I was working to put myself through university, and to be able to take this Hemingway class that I wanted to take basically meant that I had to be on campus during these 2 days of the week, I had to build my schedule around it so I could work the other 3 days of the week and then work on the weekend. And so unfortunately, at the time I thought so, I took a Jane Austen class with like the hardcore professor at our university. At the end of the term, we had to write like a 25-page paper on Jane Austen. Absolutely ridiculous. Like, this guy, everyone hated him in terms of like the workload that he would put on you. And funny enough, I have a video on Jane Austen's Mansfield Park that goes over a lot of the stuff I talked about in that paper on the channel. And I feel like that's one of my better videos, or I know it's a good video, but because I don't have a British accent and because, I don't have like the aesthetic bright set, I just don't think that one really took off and did very well. But if you like Jane Austen, go check out that video. Just type in how to read Mansfield Park Right Conscious. And the reason why Pride and Prejudice is so powerful, and many Austen novels follow the same trope, but she didn't invent it, but she really mastered it, especially in the literary novel, is this idea that people are redeemable, you guys. You see this at times, and you see people like Dostoevsky and Tolstoy playing with this and like inverting it and thinking you're going to have a clean resolution, or that characters are doing this, but then reversing it. But in Pride and Prejudice, we basically get, with Elizabeth and Darcy, a fall from grace from both of them. And both of them have to change who they are to make the relationship work, but not on the level of compromise. So there's this idea out there, and a lot of like the bros, a lot of people, even like the eat, pray, love, wanderlust women feel the same way as the bros. Like, never change for anyone, never compromise. That's like the root of all bad relationships. And I would maybe agree on that. But everyone has these malignant qualities, especially if you've never really been deep in relationships before. And at some level, because we've fallen so far, you guys, because so many of us have been raised with such bad standards when it comes to relationships and been programmed so negatively. It's honestly bad, you guys. When you look at like social media and how it programs relationships, it makes like Disney princess programming look like nothing. When you look at like what pornography and what misandry and misogyny and like, just being widespread online has done, and the seeds it has sown in relationships. And some of it's rooted in truth. A lot of it, is rooted in truth, and it's things you need to watch out for and yada, yada, yada. Like, don't be an idiot and like fall blind into something. But the messaging that I think that is missing, that is so important, is that this novel isn't, so this is what separates like something like a Pride and Prejudice from like a normal romance novel, is that the literariness of the love is in the conversion of the characters and their heart instead of the chase. And, if you've ever I watch shows with my wife, I'll make her watch fucking Twin Peaks or something insane. Well, like, hey, you gotta watch this movie, Old Boy. And then she's like, okay, well, we watch this insanity. Like, I want to watch something more light. And so like, if you watch like Bridgerton or something, it's usually about like, a lot of these shows or books that are a little bit more pulpy or genre are about the chase, about, like, oh my God. And what's funny about relationships in general is that anytime that I've ever had to chase after anyone and like done that type of play, the relationship has been horrible and never worked out. And I would say that from the friends I've talked to, it's been the same thing. But when there has to be a change, and this is the reoccurring theme here, as you guys are seeing, to actually make love work and to be worthy of love and to step into it, you have to be willing to change and transform yourself. And if you can't do that at the start, then my God, are you going to even be able to do that at the end of a relationship or, years into it? It's crazy. The story also makes a point that when you sometimes see a problem with someone, let's say you're starting to date someone and maybe there's a red flag or something, maybe it shouldn't mean that you should run, and it definitely shouldn't mean that you should like get head over heels and way too deep into the relationship. But sometimes just being honest, sometimes, like Elizabeth shaming Darcy and giving him the truth about like what he's acting like and who he is was something that really caused an internal transformation within him. And I think that if you understand energy and if you really like someone, that, at the start of a relationship, the more you can talk about the big stuff, the more landmines that you can cover and get out of the way. This is what I did with my wife and tried to do with anybody when I was dating. Just tell them the craziest stuff about me, tell them these crazy theories, ask them these big questions that I know would have to come up later on, and give them honest assessments and, really judge them and be like, is this like going to be a problem later on? Like, and when they say, no, like, don't keep it there, like, can keep the pressure up. Like I have so many friends in disasters of relationships. And I remember telling them when they were getting in, I was like, dude, you should ask her about this. Like, you need to press her about this. And he wouldn't, like, what's she saying? I'd hear the response like, do you believed her? And now years later, I was right. And like, people have done that to me in the past and I didn't listen to them. But I think that it's important that sometimes when you're single, you guys, like sometimes, people aren't, I think this idea that everyone is serially dating and like hooking up with everyone is somewhat wrong. Like, I know plenty of men and plenty of women, when they're single, they're not hooking up with other people. They're just like waiting for something to kind of happen. They're just looking for a long-term relationship. And when you're single though, for a while, you can have blind spots. I know someone who's a woman who is smart, has a job, I would say pretty normal, good looking. She's been single for 4 or 5 years. And the longer that goes, the more idiosyncratic behaviors. I was single for years, didn't get with anybody or date anybody really. And, I developed these things and some of that had to be smoothed out. And when you like look back at like Still Life with Woodpecker and some of these other stories, sometimes the honesty and the energy of some of these characters can really just help people. There's an example that I remember when I was a yoga teacher, that we were talking about people like standing with their feet out and like having bad posture. And my teacher just said that most people aren't just ever cued to like have better posture, like stand with their feet straight or like to walk straight and like don't duck walk when like and stuff. And that like, he was like, it's more effective than you think. And it was funny because I had some posture issues and some stuff going on, and him just saying it like just once to me, even before he said that statement early on in the training, just made me think like, yeah, I should. And then like, it's never like, that was enough. Like, oh, you're just doing this. Like sometimes you just need someone to talk about a blind spot that you unconsciously probably know you're neglecting, and sometimes even consciously you just don't fix. And so that's why Pride and Prejudice is absolute fire. Like I said, it is a bit sappy. It is Jane Austen, but I think that Jane Austen is one of the greatest authors of all time. She has to be at least in everybody's top 50 list. Obviously you can put her a lot higher, but when I say everybody, like everybody, every serious reader needs to have her pretty high because she is that good and that influential, especially across her career. Like when you look at Austen, like she has 5 bangers, like, and that level of success being able to write 5 masterpieces like Cormac has, like a lot of these authors like that we really view as legends that aren't one-hit wonders. They aren't the J.D. Salingers. They have like at least 5. And when you reach that zone, it's like, okay. It's one of the reasons why David Foster Wallace somewhat struggles, that he really only had one great novel, a couple good nonfiction collections, you know, and then some stuff that I would say is a little bit lesser. And that's just not enough, even though Infinite Jest is really long, to really, I think, catapult him. If he had more time to work on the Pale King that I have down here, I think it could have gone better. So speaking of Infinite Jest, no, we're not going to talk about Infinite Jest. So last up, we have Graham Greene's The End of the Affair. And Greene is someone that I don't talk about very often. I've talked about him on this channel since the start of the channel, but definitely someone who I think about a lot. There are certain authors who maybe didn't have like a massive transformative impact on me, where like it was a total worldview shift. But like there are certain things that happen in their novels or from their perspectives that I just like randomly think about like at least once a week, like just because of life events, or like I just frame certain problems through them. And Greene is one of those people for whatever reason. Obviously because he's a really good writer, but my favorite works from him are The Power and the Glory and Brighton Rock. But funny that for this last category, I was thinking about, you know, a Hemingway novel, you know, like A Farewell to Arms, or which is pretty good, The English Patient, like something related to war. And I can't sit here and spoil it for you guys, so it's going to be somewhat hard to talk about. But this novel encompasses this idea of an affair and this kind of fleeting love. But like in many of the novels we've talked about or I've contemplated, at the end of the novel, it ends somewhat tragically. Like everyone who's having these affairs ends up dying, or like there's a bunch of problems. But in this novel, it turns to more of an angle of light. It turns to a different angle of devotion. It reverses this idea of romance and alchemizes it into something higher, which I think is a really nice concept. That, you know, to conclude here, that love doesn't need to be, as I talked about earlier, something that is just given to another person. A deep emanation of love should be coming out of your heart toward everything. You know, all religion that I believe in, and you know, is based in love, like trying to connect to Jesus or to God or to the divine energy in like yoga or Hinduism or you know, whatever that is, like trying to reach that level and like living your entire life through love and, you know, toward everything. And I think that this novel bridges romantic love and that world of pure devotional love into a story that works, that does have tragic elements, that does have noir elements to it, but then also is effective and pushes a really good message. And this is one of the ones that sticks with me. It has a weird resonance in my head with American Pastoral by Philip Roth, for anyone out there who's read that, another great novel. But if you're interested and you've never read Graham Greene before, I would probably recommend you start with this one. And so Boombada Connect, there it is, everyone. Thank you guys for the support. Thank you guys for everything that you guys have done for me. If you guys want to join the book club, go hit me up over on Substack, leave a comment, expect more fire content coming to you at a much faster pace, and I will see you guys very soon in the next video.